we just covered cold outreach, and we are now transitioning to the type of advertising that I made at least half of my wealth from, and that I never talk about at all. And I get all my questions about content, which is ironic to me because I'm really new to content, but all of the money, or the majority of the money I've made, has been from paid ads. And so that is what we're going to talk about. And I really don't make a lot of content on this, so I've been really excited to share this training with you because I think it will make you a lot of money. All right, just as a quick recap here, we covered warm outreach, so how you reach out one-on-one to people you know. We covered how to post content and monetize content, so posting one-to-many to people you know, to your warm audience. And then we talked one-on-one how to communicate to strangers to get them to want to buy your stuff. And so finally what we're doing is we're communicating at large, at mass, to strangers through paid ads. So this is the final of the core four. Now to be clear, these are the only things that one person can do to let other people know about their stuff. The second half of this training is going to be using this on steroids, which will be great. All right, so here's a quick story around this. When I first, and this is why it's kind of interesting, so like I technically did the warm outreach and I made a post to get some of my first customers, but when I actually opened my gym, the first thing I did was that I ran ads. And what happened was I was actually apprenticing, call it that, at a gym owner's gym. And so I said I would work for free. He ended up paying me minimum wage, which again, just as a quick sideline reminder, I was a pretty highly paid consultant before doing this. And so this was a massive pay cut to just be like a minimum wage gym employee. And so the thing is that I still got the better end of the deal because I learned far more than I earned during that period, and then it unlocked a big growth in my income in the very near future. So I think a lot of people aren't willing to sacrifice their living situation in order to learn more. I slept on the floor of one of the gym's customers. The first day I started working with this guy, he went into his gym at 4 o'clock in the morning and said, "Hey, I've got this kid here. Can anyone put him up for the night or like give him a room?" And one guy was like, "Yeah, I got a spare bedroom. I'll take you in. Just, you know, try and help me not eat like shit." And I'm actually still friends with that guy to this day. And so anyways, I met this mentor, and I went to a conference a few weeks after meeting him that was on this crazy thing on the internet that was called Facebook ads. This is 2013. This is a long time ago. And this is right as Facebook ads began. This is when you could put clicks of, you know, you could put a hot chick up there in a bikini and be like, weight loss fast. And it was all compliant because they just needed the money. And so I went to this 2-day workshop, and I learned enough to be dangerous with it. And so I went back and I said, "Hey, I think we should try some of this Facebook stuff." And he said, "Dude, I tried it. It doesn't work." I was like, "All right, well, I learned some stuff. Like, let me give it a shot." And he said, "Well, fine. I'll make you a deal. I'll give you $1,000 to play with. But if it doesn't work, then you shut up about this Facebook stuff. And if it does work, I'll split the profit with you after, you know, we pay the ad spend back." I was like, "Cool, deal." And so this was the first ad that I ever ran. It said, "I'm looking for 5." There was no image. It was just a text ad on Facebook. It said, "I'm looking for 5 Chino Hills residents to take place in a free 6-week challenge. You must let us use your before and after pictures in our marketing exchange for the program. Click the link to sign up." No images, no videos, no frills, just words in all caps. And that ad generated leads. And I think I made, it was either $5,000 or $6,000 in sales from $1,000 in ad spend. And true to his word, paid the $1,000 back, and he gave me a disproportionate half of it, and he said, "Do it again." And that was my first foray into paid ads. So I got leads, I called him up, I brought him in person, and I sold him a 6-week challenge. And then on top of that, they would pay for the program, and if they won, or if they lost over 20 pounds or whatever the goal we set for them was in the 6-week period, we give them the money back. Now, the mousetrap of how this worked is that most people assume that we did this to like hoodwink people, but we had over 70%, 80% of people, depending on the challenge, would hit the goal. And so it wasn't that people didn't hit the goal, it's that just like a perfect lead magnet, once you work out for 6 weeks, what do you want to keep doing? Working out. I can promise you that most men and women that I have found, when they start seeing progress and start looking better, what do they want? More. And so all you do is say, "Hey, you hit this goal. Are you at your high school weight yet? No. Isn't that what you wanted? Yes. I think it's going to take a year. Do you want to take this and credit towards the year? Yes." And just like that, we would close it into a long-term thing. All right. And so this was the result. I ended up getting 19 people at $299. I didn't know how the pricing stuff worked, but it worked out. I got $5,700, I think. So I guess that was what it was, $5,700 from the first campaign that I ran. And so that was the money. And then you'll notice here that many lead generating paid ad systems are very simple in nature. Like that ad was not complicated. And that ad might work on new platforms even today because of the simplicity and the clarity of the communication. So like, do you want more members? Getting more members can be hard. We make it easy. Grab all free, fill your gym in 90 days, masterclass below, right? Doesn't have to be complicated. And so fundamentally, what we're doing is we're showing an ad with a lead magnet or some sort of offer to get our ideal audience to want our thing and take one step towards us. And then from there, we build and structure our mousetrap such that we can cover our cost to acquire them and then still make a profit. So let's get into how paid ads work. So if you think about it from a larger perspective, your paid ad interrupts other people's content. So someone is on Facebook, or someone is watching television, or someone is consuming organic content, like we talked about making content. But now you're on the flip side. You are actually interrupting their stream of value with your paid ad. And so this is what allows you to get instant scale because you don't have to have the audience. You interrupt other people's audience, and you pay the platform as an intermediary. And so that is how you reach strangers. All right? So paid ads are a way to advertise one-to-many to cold audiences, people who don't know you. Paid ads work by paying another person or business to put your offer in front of their audience. Think of it like renting eyeballs or earballs. So you don't buy them, you don't own them, you rent them for a fee. And ideally, you make more back from your paid ad and your monetization vehicle behind that than it costs you to get them. So do ads work? It's how well can you make them work? And so here's the thing, is that unlike the other methods that we've talked about, especially posting content, the reach is guaranteed. You pay for the reach. So you know that your ad will reach X amount of eyeballs. The question is how well you, or how efficiently you can extract value from those eyeballs versus the cost of reaching them. And so paid ads give us 4 problems to solve that are new. And so let's break them down. Number 1 is you have to know where to advertise, because there's lots of different platforms out there. So how do you pick the platform to advertise on? Number 2 is getting the right audience to see it. And this is probably the hardest part of paid ads. Because fundamentally, if you showed the right thing to the right audience, you're going to get a good response. If 100% of the audience was the ideal target, it would. But most platforms are not that efficient from a targeting perspective. Over time, they've gotten significantly better, and maybe in the future, we'll be able to get so dialed in, it'll be insane, and we'll laugh at these, the times that we're doing right now, like so archaic. But the targeting is still one of the hardest parts. Number 3 is making the best ad for them to see. All right, okay, now we have the right people seeing it. How do we get the highest percentage of those people to want to take action? And then number 4 is once they have taken action, how do we get them to give us permission to contact them again in the future? All right, so those are 4 things that we have to solve. So let's solve them. Number 1, where to advertise. So you say, okay, but where do I advertise, Alex? Well, find a platform where these 4 things are true. All right, number 1, that you have used it and gotten value from it as a consumer. So I have some idea how it works. You want to have some idea of how it works because you will then naturally format your ad in a way that matches the format of the platform. Because ideally, you don't want it to look like an ad, you want it to look like content, which you'll notice the more you start looking at this, the more content and ads start blending together. Because if you make lots of content, you make good content, you make your best content that performs and generates sales, and then you use that as your ad, guess what? You've merged the two. And that's when you become an exceptional advertiser. So number 1 is you want to go to a place that you already are familiar with. And if you aren't familiar with any place, again, find one where the highest percentage of your customers are, and then get used to it and learn it. Number 2 is that you can target the people on the platform interested in your stuff. All right, so this is a screenshot from Facebook. It's probably changed since I even made the screenshot. These platforms change all the time. But the idea is that you want to be able to target the ideal audience that you are looking for. So if you sell to women between 25 and 45, then you want to exclude men in general and women that are below 25 and above 45. Great. Well, now we have a higher percentage of our audience who are going to see our ad. And so we're not paying for wasted eyeballs, and that increases the efficiency of our advertising. And again, I'm going to restate this because I think it's so important. Paid ads is not about whether they work, it's about how efficient they are. Because if you think about it from big picture, if I had enough money to pay to reach every single person in the entire world, I would generate a return. The question is whether the return would be greater than the cost. And so with paid ads, you can reach everybody. And that's why they are one of the fastest ways of scaling big. But you have to manage your costs. So it's about efficiency, not whether they work. So number 3 of where do I advertise is I want to know how to format ads specific to the platform, which I'll dive into in step 3 in a second. All right? But you can see here that these are 2 different types of ads, and these are specific, and they look like content, right? And so I made them look like content because I wanted people to consume them. And I want my ideal audience, ideally, no one's going to consume stuff about gym leads unless you own a gym, right? And so that's, unless you're somebody who markets to gym owners, you might consume it too, right? My competitors might consume it. But by showing this stuff, I'm bringing in the right type of audience and excluding everyone else. And number 4, and this is a big one, is that I have the minimum amount of money to spend to place an ad. All right, so different platforms have different minimum spends. So if you want to run a TV ad or a radio ad, you have to spend a lot more money up front than some of the newer platforms today where you can micro spend. You can spend $5 for an ad, which is why some of the new social media platforms have democratized access to paid advertising, which 50 years ago, you could only run radio and newspaper and TV. And that was it. And there was a huge barrier to entry. And so what's happened is that we've had all these tiny competitors that enter the marketplace because the barrier to entry is lower, which creates more competition, but more opportunity. So, pro tip, place your ads where your competitors place ads to start. Right? This might seem counterintuitive, but platforms often have different ad types. So for example, on LinkedIn, you can send message ads, or you can run newsfeed ads. On Instagram, you can run ads to the newsfeed or to stories. On YouTube, you can run ads on the sidebar, the midstream, or the pre-roll. So how do you know where to start? Just look at the placement of other people in your space and start there. If they can make it work, so can you. Again, this is just like following the top guy in the sales team. Replicate before you iterate. Once you've matched their performance, then you can get cute with it. But for now, if you're just starting out, replicate first. Again, not copy, model. Okay. Action steps. Start with one platform that meets those 4 requirements and start watching, listening, and reading ads on that platform as a first step to learn how to make one. All right? And so I think I have this in the book. I'll say it now then. Is most platforms have ads libraries where you can search because of advertising compliance, where you can look for the top ads of anything. And so my recommendation is look for the ads that have been running the longest and have the most engagement. Then transcribe those ads. And what you want to look for is how they hook, retain, and reward the person, how they make the offer, and what offer they're giving them. And so when you're looking at these things and how, the language they're using, if you write down or transcribe 50 or so ads that are the highest performing ones, it will give you such a head start on making your own ad. And again, don't copy one ad, look at 50, and then let it mess around, swirl around in your brain, and then write your own version. Write 10 different versions of it, and then use those and format them similarly and place them in a place that is already shown to convert. If you do that, you'll be 9 steps ahead of everybody else. So that's where you advertise. That solves problem 1. Problem 2 is, okay, what should my ad say? So, okay, but how do I get the right people to see it? You target them. So here's my little image of finding people, right? So if we start the entire world, which you kind of do, we need to be a bit more specific. So you chose a platform that has 100 million users, you've already cut out 99% of the world, right? So continue to cut down. Specific is good. I'd rather you be too specific to too small of an audience. This is the lakes, ponds, puddles, oceans perspective. Start with the puddle and then move out. Because what will happen is you'll have the highest ROI in the puddle, and then you can move a little wider. And that will afford you the money to be a little bit less efficient. And then that'll afford you money to be a little bit less efficient until eventually, if you're good enough, you can market to the entire world. And so the first round, we selected our platform. The second round is selecting within that platform how we target. All right, so modern advertising platforms have 2 ways to target, and you can use them separately or combine them. Number 1 is you target a lookalike audience. All right, this is fancy term, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But modern platforms can show your ad to an audience that's similar to and much bigger than a list you provide. Remember we had that list? Guess where we get to use it? So advertisers call this a lookalike audience. So you have this list that we've already created from your warm outreach and your cold outreach. Add them together, and then upload those lists. Now, the higher quality of the list, the higher quality the output of the audience will be. So if you are a big enough company that you have 1,000 customers, then uploading a customer list will find you more people who are like your customers. If you upload people who just opted in, then they'll find more people who just opted in. Now, that's not as good as customers, but it's better than a completely cold audience, right? So you upload their minimum list size to create a lookalike audience. The bigger and the better equals better for the list quality. And you want to add your warm reach out list and your cold reach out list together if you need to, all right? So that is type 1, is that you target a lookalike audience. The second way that you can target, and you can combine these 2, is you target with a factor of your choosing. So remember earlier I was saying age, income, gender, interest, time, location, etc. Those are all things that you can target. So sure, you can have your lookalike audience off that list, and then you can add in age, gender, income, interest, time, geography, etc. And so that gets it even narrower. Now, you could do one or the other or both. It just depends on the size of the pie that you're looking at. all right? So for example, if you know no one over 45 or below 25 has ever bought your thing, then exclude those people, right? If you sell car parts, then show your ad during car shows and on car channels, right? If only people with pets buy your thing, then include pets as an interest, right? That's the idea here. And the big thing here is that targeting becomes one of the hardest things of paid ads, but this is the only problem to solve. Because fundamentally, if the right people see your ad and your lead magnet or offer is exceptional, they will engage. So if your paid ads aren't working efficiently enough, it just means the right people are not seeing them in enough quantity. So you just got to work on your targeting, all right? It massively simplifies the problem to be solved. And as an aside, for everybody who's a local business, since local markets are already tiny in comparison to national markets, you won't want to add more filters. Like, you don't want to do that. All right, so be as specific as possible, but no further. And the thing is that local markets on their own are already like 0.1% of a nation, so you're already pretty narrow. So if you're marketing like local, like 2-3 mile radius, you don't want to add more than maybe one filter, right? So like maybe it's older folks, or maybe it's men, or maybe it's women, but I wouldn't add much over that. And especially if you're in a like really tiny market, like you're already going to reach everybody with a pretty nominal amount of spend. And so it's okay to just be a little bit more inefficient because you're already so tiny and targeted. And as an aside, local targeting and local ads are one of the easiest types of ads to run because you already have so much trust. It's one of the differences between national advertising campaigns and local. Because if you're like, hey, we're next to the 7-Eleven on 5th and Gold, then people are like, oh, I know where that is. And so you don't even need to sell anything. You can just get them to opt in and you just call them. You're like, hey, oh, where are you at? Oh, yeah, we're on Christ. Oh, well, why don't you come on in? Like, it doesn't have to be complicated when you're local. So again, as an aside, if you're a local business owner, if you have the offer right, you just target your area and you're usually good to go. So here are your action steps. Bring all your lead lists together in one place. Separate them by past and previous customers, warm outreach, and cold outreach. If any of those lists are big enough, then use the ones that are closest to your customers. If you don't have a big enough list, then combine them into one list, and then over time, once you get enough customers or get enough scheduled calls, and you can sift those out, re-upload those and make a lookalike audience off of that, and then add your targeting stuff. And if the platform allows, use these lists in order of quality to create the lookalike audience, and then add filters. And that's it. That's the game of targeting, all right? And if you're incapable of making a lookalike audience, then just start by targeting interests on their own. Just start targeting people with pets in an area, in a state, whatever. So step 3 is, but what should my ad say? So there's 3 kind of elements to an ad as I've broken these down, all right? You have a call out, you have the value of the ad, and then you have a call to action. So you might notice, this is the hook, retain, reward, just said differently. The call out is the thing that gets their attention. It's the hook. And I purposely use different language here because it's the concept that matters more than the nomenclature, all right? The value is the meat. That's what retains them, right? They get some, and we do that value, provide that value so that they trust us and like us more and are more willing to take the next step. And the reward, as we want to position it for them for consuming this ad, is to take the next step, right? If you got value from this thing, then you'll love X, Y, Z, all right? And as a side note here, I want to make this point, is that as you become an advertiser and you learn the game of advertising, I would recommend that you don't skip ads. So I don't have any premium memberships, I don't think, to any platforms. And when you're trying to consume or learn an industry, you should click on every ad of people in that industry, in your industry, so that your newsfeed is filled up with that. Don't let it hurt your ego. You're learning. And there's no better school of advertising than what's working right now today, right? And so I would highly recommend that you don't do premium subscriptions that make you skip the ads, and I would recommend clicking on every ad you possibly can so that you start getting targeted by more of them until eventually your whole newsfeed is ads, so that the highest value thing in your newsfeed is what you learn from everyone else. All right, so just what it has done for me is it has transformed what used to be a nuisance into an ever-learning experience for me. So actually advertising in general now, I get value from both the content that I'm watching and the interruption because I learn from both. And so that's one of the unique things that we can do to make our lives just a lot better as advertisers, because like now, things that people see as a nuisance for us is just school. And so what we're looking at here, and this is what I was referencing earlier, is that you want to look at how they call out their ideal customers. Like the hooks, so important, right? Figure out what they're saying, because their language, like, do they say gym owners? Do they say health club owners? Do they say micro gym? Do they say fitness professionals? Do they say trainers? Do they say personal trainers? Do they say PTs? Like, what is the language they use? And usually it's the language that they use to self-identify. And we want to use their language to talk to them, right? And so look at what everyone else is doing just to get an idea of like, oh no, okay, that isn't the avatar I want. This is the avatar I want. I want more of those. And then you click down those pathways. Number 2 is how they present the value elements. So we talk about the value equation. So what is the dream outcome? What is the perceived likelihood of achievement? What is the time delay? What is the effort and sacrifice? How are they describing each of those value elements and their inverses, right? The dream outcome versus a nightmare, right? The perceived likelihood of achievement versus the risk. The time delay versus the speed. The effort and sacrifice versus the ease and simplicity, right? And so we want to see how they present those elements in the ad so that, again, we can model the language, not the same, don't copy it, because, again, you want to make it your own and you want to make it for your products, but you can still use the same linguistics to get people to respond. And then finally, how they give their audience a call to action. How do they get them to do the thing? And so let's use the 3 chunks to make an ad. I need to get them to notice my ad, which is the call out. I need to get them to interested in what I have to offer, which is the value. And call to action gets them, I need to tell them what to do next. And once I do that, they will take the next step. So, call out. People noticing your ad is the most important part of the ad by a lot. The purpose of each second of the ad is to sell the next section of the ad. So think of them as mini content units that are continually spinning within an ad package, okay? And so the headline is the first sale. And so focus your effort front to back. So if you're thinking about this, you want to put 80% of your attention on the first 5 seconds. And you're like, that's crazy, because it won't take me so long. It should. Because if you're doing enough research and you're doing enough homework, if you nail the first 5 seconds, honestly, almost every ad will work, if you're talking to the right people, okay? The first impression is the part of the ad that I test the most. I'll give you a little example from me. So when I record ads, this is a tactical tip that's not in the presentation, so you just have to enjoy this while you have it. When I would record ads, I would record maybe 10 meaty ads, so like the actual value component of it. So I'd break one belief, or I would demonstrate one skill, or some little nuance that they didn't understand as well that I knew that I could demonstrate based off experience. And that would be the meat of the ads, right? That's the value part. So I record the value separately. And then I would go and record 30 different hooks. And then when you have 30 hooks, you can paste those onto 10, and I have 300 different ad variations that I can use. And as soon as I have the best converting hook, then I can see which value converts best off that hook. And that's the test and iterate process that creates winners and home runs over and over and over again and allows you to scale. So I'm going to break a different belief for you right now. The reason that your ads aren't scaling, all right? So most people think, oh, I can't scale my ads past $1,000 a day, or I can't scale my ads past $10,000 a day, or I can't scale my ads past $100,000 a day. Insert whatever number you want. They think that the platform has capped them. The platform wants to take your money. They have not capped you. What is actually capped is how good your ad is. You have an ad that can only go to this warm of an audience. And then as soon as it gets outside of that warm of an audience, it stops converting. So the difference is between the top 1% of Facebook advertisers versus everybody else, they split test 11 times more content than everyone else. And for that reason, they're able to scale 10 times, 100 times more. So the fact that you can't scale your advertising isn't because of the platform, it's because your ads aren't good enough. And so you see the cap, but that's because your ads in general, like you're a $1,000 a day ad maker. You're just not good enough. Your ads aren't good enough, and it's probably because you don't make enough volume. You might make, and it's funny because I talk to business owners all the time who run paid ads. I'm like, okay, well, what's your cadence? Like, how many ads are you making? Like, oh, I mean, we make tons of ads. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like, well, I mean, once a month we record ads, and I mean, I make at least 10. I'm like, 10? I'm like, a month? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, well, there's a problem. I'm like, I don't need to look at anything else. I already know that that's the problem. Because when you want to scale, like really scale, unless you have super wide targeting in terms of your audience, you're going to have to split test significantly more on the ads, the hook, and the value itself, and the CTA in order to get that one package that scales to 100 million people and is still profitable. That's the key. And so back to our presentation, Mr. Ogilvy, I'm repeating this because, again, it is one of the most impactful things that I've learned in advertising is that after you've written your headline, you spend 80 cents of your advertising dollar. That is why we focus so much on the beginning, because if you don't get them in the beginning, nothing else matters. And so the call is whatever you do to get the attention of the audience, all right? And so these are labels, yes questions, if-then statements, and ridiculous results. So labels would be an example if I said, hey, are you a homeowner? Do you own a home over $400,000 a year? Boom. Yes questions are, do you sweat at night? Do you toss and turn? These are implied yes questions. Someone says, yeah, that's me. Oh, I do that. Do you snore a lot? Do you sleep with your mouth open? Do you wake up with cotton mouth in the middle of the night? Do you always have a water thing next to your bed? Ah, that is me, right? All of a sudden, these are yes questions. People are like, yeah, that's me, right? These are two different examples of call-outs. If-then statements. If you are born between 1974 and 1885, then you may qualify for mesothelioma, whatever the thing, right? The thing is if you were in this area at this time, you may X, right? It's if-then statements. And mind you, that's for a lawsuit. But fundamentally, it works the same way. If-then, right? And then finally, you have ridiculous results. Gym in Colorado opens first day, overfilled, has to refund customers because they can't fit them all. Well, if I'm a gym owner, I would be interested in that. And then I might read more. And so I got the call out, I got the right person. So these are the four most common, or at least the ones that I find work best to get call outs that work. So labels that they identify with, yes questions or things that they would nod their head up and down to, if-then statements, and then ridiculous results. Labels are a word or set of words putting people into a group. These include features, traits, titles, places, and other descriptors. So Clark County moms, gym owners, remote workers, I'm looking for XYZ. When I said I'm looking for 5 local Chino Hills residents, that was a label, all right? To be most effective, the ideal customer has to identify with that label. That's a local ad hack, by the way. All right, yes questions, we went over that. They should say, yes, that's me. Do you wake up and pee more than once a night? Do you have trouble tying your shoes? Do you have a home worth more than 400 grand? Yes questions. If-then statements, all right? If they meet your conditions, then you help them make a decision. If you run over $10,000 a month in ads, I can save you 20% or more, right? If you were born between 1978 and 1986 in Muskogee, Oklahoma, you may qualify for a class action lawsuit. If you want XYZ, then pay attention. And then ridiculous results. Bizarre, rare, out of the ordinary stuff, right? Massage studio books out 2 years in advance, client's furious. This woman lost 50 pounds eating pizza and fired her trainer. Government is handing out $1,000 checks to anyone who can answer these 3 questions, right? These are things that are bizarre and ridiculous that get attention, all right? And so call-outs also don't have to be just words. They can also be noises or visuals in the environment. So you've got contrast, likeness, and the scene. So contrast is any stuff that sticks out in the first few seconds. Colors, sounds, the movements, etc. Note what catches your attention. So when you're watching these other people's ads, you're looking for the call-outs, you see the words that they're using, but also look at everything that's not spoken. And a lot of times, 90% of communication is nonverbal. So we want to look at everything else too. So a bright shirt, for example, almost always gets more attention than a black or dull shirt, right? Attractive people almost always get more attention than plain-looking people, right? Moving stuff almost always gets more attention than still stuff. Is that making sense? Cool. So that's contrast. The next one's likeness, all right? So thinking visually, think about this as showing the label versus saying the label. All right, so the features, traits, title, places, and other descriptors that they identify with. All right, so people want to work with people who talk, look, and act ways familiar to them. Why? Because they have received reward from people like that in the past, right? And you may not, you personally, look, talk, or act in ways familiar to them. So if you serve a broad customer base, then use ethnicities, ages, genders, personalities in your ads that look like them, not you. So if you serve a narrow customer base, example, medical devices for seniors, then use people who look like them. So if I want to market to doctors, wear a lab coat. If you're marketing to plumbers, make sure your background has pipes in it or is under a sink, right? You want the person who's doing the ad and the background to sync up with the ideal customer. And I'll show you, I'll prove it to you that if you are the one in your ads right now and you look at your customers and they all look and talk like you, why do you think that is? Because your ad calls out to people who look and talk like you. And so if you want to expand beyond that, then use people in places that look more like them. By the way, that's also how you scale a company massively, especially if you have a diverse audience. You want to show different personalities as the heads, talking heads, that become the faces of the brand, and then you can retreat back and own the whole thing. All right? So the scene is showing the yes questions and the if-then statements visually. So example, an ad with a person tossing and turning in bed calls out to people with sleep troubles. A pear next to an hourglass can call out to people with a pear-shaped body. A room full of staff stacked to the ceiling calls out to people who have too much junk, right? A rock hitting a window calls out to people with broken windows. A local landmark, locals think, hey, I know that place. And they pay attention. So we want to use the scene in addition to the words, in addition to the contrast, to get people's attention. We want everything aligned to call them out. And so if you're like, oh, it only takes me 5 seconds to do this. Think about each of these elements that you want to sew into the beginning so you can maximize how many people see and engage with your ad. That is the difference between a $1 million a year advertising campaign and a $100 million a year advertising campaign. Okay, action step. So I'm always impressed with the clever and innovative ways advertisers call out to their prospects. So instead of muting or hitting skip ad, look for the call outs. Become a student of the game, and my goal is that for the rest of your life, when you see an ad, you turn up the volume. Once we do that, we've called them out, we have to get them interested, right? So if people think an offer or lead magnet has big benefits and tiny costs, they value it, right? If the costs outweigh the benefits, then they don't value it. Should make sense. The best ads make the benefits look as big as possible and the costs look as small as possible. So here's my framework that I use when I'm writing ads. And so I want this to be more of an ideation framework than a write these words framework. So you have consumed my content, hopefully, to a certain degree. And earlier, we talked about the value equation and the 4 elements, right? Dream outcome, perceived likelihood of achievement, time delay, effort and sacrifice. Now, if we were to actually reshuffle these and make these into positive and negatives, you've got dream, fast, easy, likely. On the bad side, you've got nightmare, slow, hard, risky. And so those create the what. So think about carrots and sticks. The carrot is all you want them to have more of. They want more dream, they want more fast, they want more easy, they want more likely. Stick is nightmare, less slow, less hard, less risky. We're going to look at all 3 of these, and then who, and then when, and we're going to combine these into a copywriting framework for you to make any ad. So let's start with the what. So the 8 key elements are just the 4 value elements taken into positive and negative, carrots and sticks, all right? And just think about positives and their opposite, all right? Dream outcome, nightmare, perceived likelihood of achievement, risk, time delay, speed, effort and sacrifice, ease. Those are the 4, or the 8 elements together. And so a good ad for dream outcome will show and tell the maximum benefit the prospect can achieve using the thing you sell. It should align with the ideal prospect's dream outcome for that sort of product or service. These are the results they experience after buying the thing, okay? Now the opposite of that is a good ad will also show them the worst possible hassles, pain, etc. of going without your solution. So in short, the bad stuff they experience if they don't buy. So you don't want to just show the dream outcome, you also want to show them continuing down the path of not experiencing your solution and how much worse it would be, especially effective with problems that get worse over time. So with perceived likelihood of achievement, which we've talked about a lot, or at least I have earlier in this, because of fast failures, we assume that even when we buy, there's a risk that we don't get what we want. It makes sense. That's why we don't buy everything, because we don't believe everyone because we've been burned in the past. So we lower the perceived risk by minimizing or explaining away past failures, emphasizing the success of people like them, giving assurances by authority, guarantees, and how what you have to offer will at least give them a better chance of success than what they currently do. That is the idea. Now the flip side of that is that we show a good ad will show them how risky it is to not act, what their life will be like if they carried on as they always have, show how they will repeat their past failures and their problems will get bigger and worse. Now we get to time delay. A good ad will show them how slow their current trajectory is, or that they will never get where they want at this current rate. On this part, we're prodding on the pain, and then we can flip it and say, to get the things we want, we know we have to spend time getting them. A good ad will show and tell how much faster they will get the thing they want if they buy our thing, or they take the next step. Effort and sacrifice. A good ad also shows the amount of work and skill they'll need to get the result without your solution, all right? So they have to think, man, this is gonna be a lot of effort, and I've gotta be really good in order to get this result if I don't use this thing. Whereas they'll be forced to keep giving up the things they love and continue suffering from the things they hate, or worse, that they work really hard, sacrifice a ton right now, and get nowhere. This is what we want to show and describe in the ads in as short and compact as possible. And these are the things I'm asking you that I want you to look out for and listen for in the ads that do well. Now, all 8 elements aren't necessarily going to be available or included in every ad, but they will have elements of each of these 8 things. And the more of these elements you can weave in seamlessly together, the more powerful the ad will be, all right? And so the opposite of that would be ease. To get the things we want, we know we have to change something, but then we assume that we have to do stuff we hate and give up stuff we love. And ease comes from a lack of needed work or skill. Like, write that down. Ease comes from a lack of needed work or skill. So if you can show someone that it doesn't take a lot of effort and they don't need to have a lot of qualifications in order to get this thing or this outcome, then they will feel like it's easy. A good ad disproves that assumption, and it tells and shows how you can avoid the stuff you hate doing and do more of the stuff you love doing without working hard or having lots of skill and still getting your dream outcome. So that is the what. Check. So now let's go to the who. I said there's 3 parts, the what, the who, and the when. So let's go to the who. All right, so now you're thinking, okay, I've got these 8 key elements. The other 2 are easier, don't worry. But those are the 8 key elements, the value equation, and then they're opposites. We want to talk more good, less bad, and show and tell both of those. So now we're talking about the who. So humans are primarily status-driven, all right? And the status of one human comes from how other humans treat them. All right, so people gaining status, your customers, and the people giving it to them, their spouse, their kids, their parents, extended family, colleagues, bosses, friends, rivals, competitors. There's lots of different people that give and dole out status to your customer. And so we don't want to just talk about their perspective, but the perspectives of those around them who will give them or take status away. So as an example, if I were selling weight loss, I can look at any of the key 8 variables that I talked about at the beginning and say, okay, how can I describe how fast this was, but not just from, okay, well, 2 months into the future, he pulls his belt loop and he sees that he goes 2 notches lower. Wow, that's him experiencing the benefit of this weight loss program. But how can I show that from someone else's perspective? Okay, his wife sees him do that and says, great job, honey, you're doing awesome. You're looking good. You might fit into your marriage tuxedo. Huh. So we can explain that experience from someone else's perspective. To the same degree, if we're talking about like making more income, it's one thing to make more income, but if your wife comments on it, or your colleagues comment as you pull up in the new car, or when you rock your drive down the fairway with the new $400 driver that you just bought, and everyone's jaws are on the ground, which one matters more? That one, because that is status from the people that they're trying to get status from. And so we want to think about the benefit of the thing, of one of those 8 key variables, and then describe it in every possible way that we can. And so by doing that, we basically take one benefit and make it multifaceted, and we try and fit the key to the hole that the person has a lack of, right? Because fundamentally, motivation comes from deprivation. So you are more motivated to eat the hungrier you are. And so we don't know what they're most hungry for. And so they might have a really great marriage, and their wife tells them great stuff all the time, but when they go to work, they get beat up every day. And so we want to have the wife key, but we also want to use the rival at work key. We also want to use the boss key. We also want to use the kids key. We also want to use the frenemy dad key. Like whatever other keys we have to depict status going towards them from the place that they don't get it. And we can use that one pillar in the sand from each of those 8 variables. We can show speed from everyone else's perspective. Like, hey, so-and-so comes back from a work trip and sees you, and they're like, dude, you're looking great at the office. Did you know that people who lose weight are more likely to get promoted? Right? So there's different ways that you can tie the benefits in to different environments and circumstances, and we want to hit as many of those piano keys as we can to play the right song. So first we have the what, which is the 8 variables, and then the who is trying to explain those benefits from as many perspectives as possible to get the one that matters most to them. So that's the who. And then finally we have the when, all right? So people often think about how their decisions affect the here and now. But if we want to be extra compelling, and we do, we should also explain what the decisions led to in the past and what the decisions could lead to in the future. So we do this by getting them to visualize through their own timeline, past, present, and future. Okay? So, in that same weight loss example, to just keep it consistent, I can talk about how their wife used to think about them when they got married. I can think about their wife, how they perceive them today. And then I can think about how their wife is going to perceive them in the future once they've lost weight. I can also take the negative of that and talk about how they have struggled in the past with their weight loss and the negative thing that their wife has lost respect for them, right? In the past and the present, and this is a tough one, but incredibly compelling, is negative visualization in the future. So if I say, hey, if you keep going on the path you are, you've gained 5 pounds a year every year. So 5 years from now, if you step on the scale and you're 25 pounds heavier, what will your wife think then? What will your kids think then? What if you can't play with your kids, but the rival dad can play with your kids and his kids? And you can't because you're on the sideline because your ankle hurts or your knee hurts because you're overweight, right? And so we're playing positive scenarios, moving through the timeline, through them personally, and other people's perspectives, and we have 8 of the variables. So when you multiply this together, if you're thinking through this, you're like, whoa, there's unlimited, there's not unlimited, there's just a very large amount of variables that you can use here to describe the benefits and the costs of the thing you sell. So if we make the benefits more of all the good stuff from all these different angles, past, present, future, and minimize the costs from all these different angles, past, present, future, then we have a very compelling ad. And so you can't hit all of them, and that's the idea. But this will give you an endless variety of ways to attack the prospect's belief system so that you can persuade them to do the thing to help themselves. And those are the fundamentals of making the value content in a good ad. And so when you put the what, the who, and the when together, we answer the why they should be interested. And so their spouse, who, will perceive how fast what they fit into, right? That suit your wife loves that didn't fit but does now, in the future, when, or how the kids who, month after month, when, right, got more interested in eating healthy and tagging along during workouts, the what, or how they, who, catch a look at themselves in a reflection in the mall a few months later and realize stuff actually fits me in the store now, right? So their spouse will perceive how fast they fit into that suit that she loves but doesn't fit but now does in the future, or how their kids month after month got more interested in eating healthy and tag along during the workouts, or how they catch a look at themselves in the reflection in the mall a few months in and realize, shoot, the stuff fits me in the store now. So all I did there was show the benefits and the costs from different perspectives in past, present, and future. And you can think about unlimited ways to show variety for one thing that you sell. And that is what gives you endless variety in the ads that you make. And so here's a little pro tip. You want to make your ads as specific as you can, but no specificer. Okay? So the more specific your copy, the more efficient it can get, but also the longer it tends to get. So you can imagine we can expand this to ad infinitum, right? And if it gets too long for the platform, it will lower its efficiency. So make the ad in its entirety as specific as you can in the most efficient space you've got. All right? If you've got audio and visuals at your disposal, then use contrast, likeness, and the scene itself to match your copy. So sometimes the work will have to be done not using words, but with the visuals that can say a lot more than the words ever could. All right? It becomes more specific without getting longer. And this makes your ad even more efficient and profitable. So again, I've given you a lot of variables here, and that's because there's a lot of ways to advertise, or at least a lot of things that could be contained within an advertisement. But these are the frameworks that I use, that I've used successfully to scale our company's paid ads, okay? And so when we combine everything we can get the prospects going toward, the 4 value drivers, and also what they're getting away from, the 4 opposites, which is the 8 key drivers, the many perspectives we can show them gaining status, and different timelines for each, we get unlimited inspiration for our ads, right? And so I want you to get as many advertising angles with your offer as you can with the what, who, when framework, all right, which I just went over. And then finally, now that we have the meatiest part of this, we just have to give them a call to action. And it's crazy how many times I see ads and they don't have a good call to action at the end. All right, again, this is about being clear, not clever. So if your ad got them interested, then your audience will have huge motivation for a tiny period of time. All right, so we have to take advantage during that short window. Tell them exactly what to do next, so spell it out. Click this button, call this number, reply with yes, go to this website, etc. All right? You want to make the CTAs quick and easy. So easy phone numbers, obvious buttons, simple websites. For example, a common CTA is to direct the audience to a website. So make your web address short and memorable. Go to acquisition.com, right? And as an aside note, if I said alexsprivateequityfirm.com/free book and course 2782, right? Versus acquisition.com/training. I think that the world actually has this mispriced, genuinely. I think that short domains are worth more than they go for because I think there's some brand credibility, but I think the biggest benefit that is unspoken is that it is memorable and that people will type it in. And so I'll give you a stat that most people probably wouldn't want me to share internally, but 80% of our traffic comes from people hand keying in acquisition.com. And so that means that people remember it and they know how to find me. And so for me, I paid $370,000 for this domain, just the domain, just the name. And I think it was one of the best purchases I ever made because people know where to find me. And so I think that the world has simply underpriced short, clear domains, not overpriced them. my 2 cents. Little tweet to remember. Assume the audience has no idea who you are, what you do, how it works, they're in a rush, and they have a 3rd grade education. A good way to think about how to make these ads. And just like all the other things before, keep it below a 3rd grade reading level, and you'll get twice as many people to respond. So, what should my ad say? Whew, that was a big one. But hopefully, you have a much better idea of a framework that you can repeatedly use and get unlimited ads that actually work. So, how do I get their info? This is short and sweet. After they take action, get their contact information. My favorite way to get contact information is a simple landing page. Don't overthink it, okay? There are 3 landing pages that when I look at all of our companies that we use most commonly, which is headline, subheadline, contact info, submit. Same thing except with an image. Same thing with an image, and then 3 bullets. Those are the 3 most common layouts I use. Pick one of them. Doesn't really matter. We've used them all, and all you got to do is test it. And the nice thing is the simpler the landing page, the fewer variables you have to test, you can quickly improve it. It also gives the person who's clicking to that page fewer things to do. They said they wanted the thing. They go to the page says, here's the thing you said you wanted. They're like, yeah, I guess I did want it. And they submit. And then you get super high conversion rates, okay? So make sure your landing pages match your ads. This is probably one of the most underrated things ever because it takes work. But if your ad is a certain color and a certain person and uses certain words, make sure the landing page uses the same words and same colors and same person. Simple stuff, right? But people don't do it. And the more steps you get someone or ask someone to go through, the fewer people will do it. But the more qualified the leads will be. So that's the push and pull of marketing in general. So there's going to be a balance there. If you get too many leads, then add some qualification steps. If you get too few leads, remove some. So here's the action step. Build your first landing page. I wasted 4 years feeling too scared to make a landing page because I was like, I'm tech afraid. I tend to be slow with technology. I try not to be, and so I'm working on that. But when I finally tried, I finished my landing page before lunch. So it took me 4 years to decide to start trying to build a landing page, and I built it in 4 or 5 hours. All right, and so I could have had all the benefits of knowing how to build landing pages 4 years earlier, but I waited 4 years. Don't be like that, all right? So once you have that, and you have a place to direct them to capture their information, now you have engaged leads from pay ads. Hooray, we did it. So here's a conclusion. Run paid ads, part 1, the conclusion. Callouts you need for them to notice it. Value elements give them a reason to do something. Calls to action give them a way to do it. And now the only question remains, which is how efficient were we? So let's talk about money stuff.